SpaceX's Starship Flight 9 launched under the blazing Texas sun, fueled by anticipation, confidence, and a legacy of relentless testing. The sleek silver rocket, standing like a monolith at Starbase, rose on a column of flame, her 33 Raptor engines firing with synchronized fury. It was the kind of spectacle that grabs the soul, an entire planet watching, hopeful, breath held. But the story that followed was not one of triumph. It was of history repeating itself in ways eerily familiar, painfully reminiscent of Flight 3. For all its promise, Flight 9 mirrored the failures that SpaceX had hoped to leave behind. The liftoff was flawless. With its raw power and elegant trajectory, Flight 9 roared off the pad and soared into the sky, shedding its earthly shackles. Just as in Flight 3, the booster executed a clean hot staging maneuver. The upper stage separated beautifully, continuing its journey to orbit while the booster flipped 180 degrees to begin its descent. At that moment, it felt like progress, like SpaceX had moved past the ghosts of earlier missions. But cracks began to show, not in metal or flame but in the rhythm of the mission. Booster 14, like Booster 10 before it, faltered. Flight 3, which flew in March the previous year with Booster 10 and Ship 28, ended in spectacular failure. That booster had attempted a controlled descent after stage separation, lighting up 13 center Raptor engines in a coordinated burn designed to slow it for landing. It had looked promising. Everything seemed on track until the grid fins began to struggle against the forces of re-entry. A wobble, a roll, an eerie hint of instability. Then came the engine relight, and the failure. Only 3 Raptors managed to ignite and they barely held. The system collapsed. The booster slammed into the Gulf in a fiery cascade of liquid oxygen and steel. The cause? Depressurization in the LOX tank. A fundamental failure in the rocket's core systems. The Raptors, starved of pressure, couldn't function. The loss of control and the final violent end were tragic but instructive. Lessons were learned. Engineers pored over the data, made modifications and pressed forward. But 1 year later, Flight 9 unfolded with eerie precision along the same tragic path. Stage separation for Flight 9 was nearly perfect. Booster 14 flipped elegantly and entered the clouds as 13 center Raptors ignited for the boost back burn. It was textbook SpaceX. Highly choreographed, mission-critical, and seemingly under control. But there was a twist this time. Unlike Booster 10, SpaceX had no intention of recovering Booster 14. It was a sacrifice, a data-rich test meant to validate shutdown and high-drag re-entry protocols. After the boost-back burn, the engines were shut down intentionally. The booster vented excess LOX, lightening its mass. Then it began its fall. The descent was steep and dramatic. Without engine control, the booster relied entirely on aerodynamics, a high angle of attack to increase drag and slow down. It was a bold experiment, an effort to maximize payload capability by reserving less propellant for recovery. This maneuver, if successful, would have rewritten the recovery rulebook. But at T+540 seconds, all 13 engines were commanded to reignite. For a moment, the sky lit up. Telemetry confirmed that 12 of the 13 Raptors came alive. But then, just seconds later at T+617, everything went dark. A silence that spoke volumes. The explosion was devastating, a fireball piercing through the cloud cover, echoed in data streams and mission control comms. Booster 14 was gone. Just like Booster 10, it had made it past the hardest part only to fail when it mattered most. The similarities were undeniable. Both boosters performed a flip maneuver post-staging, completed a boost-back burn, and transitioned to 3-engine descent. Both experienced issues with engine relight. Both disintegrated midair in fiery finales. And most damning of all, both showed signs of LOX tank depressurization before the final blow. This isn't just a technical issue. It's a systemic one. The LOX tanks on Starship boosters are massive, complex pressure vessels designed to deliver stable flow to some of the most powerful engines ever built. If they can't maintain that pressure, everything downstream fails. Thrust collapses, guidance becomes meaningless, and the entire recovery architecture falls apart. This vulnerability has now cost SpaceX 2 full-scale boosters, months of work and hard-won credibility. Yet despite these setbacks, the progress is real. In many ways, Flight 9 was more advanced than its predecessors. The upper stage, for instance, traveled farther and faster than ever before. But even that ended in familiar disappointment. Just like Ship 28 on Flight 3, Ship 35 on Flight 9 failed to survive re-entry. It lost attitude control and began to spin wildly, a steel dart tumbling through the upper atmosphere. No payload deployment. No controlled landing. Just another uncontrolled breakup over the Indian Ocean. Again, it came down to the same category of failure. Loss of stability, failure of control systems, and thermal loads overwhelming the vehicle. In both flights, the upper stage made it most of the way through its trajectory before it lost control. In both flights, the result was total destruction. And in both flights, the lessons are critical. The irony is brutal. Starship is being designed for full reuse. It's supposed to land both stages, refuel them, and fly again. It's the cornerstone of Elon Musk's vision for Mars. But so far, reusability remains theoretical. Every flight ends in wreckage. Every prototype destroyed. SpaceX is learning, yes, but at enormous cost. Still, it's worth remembering that Falcon 9, SpaceX's current workhorse, went through its own era of catastrophic failures. Rockets exploded. Landings missed. Engines failed. But over time, it evolved into the most reliable rocket on Earth. Starship is on the same path, only it's much larger, far more ambitious, and under much greater scrutiny. The question now is, what next? Will Flight 10 avoid the fate of its predecessors? Can SpaceX finally crack the code of LOX tank stability and engine relight? Or are we doomed to watch this pattern repeat itself yet again? In the end, Flight 9 isn't just a mission report. It's a cautionary tale. It reminds us that space is hard, that progress isn't linear, and that even the most advanced systems are vulnerable to simple failure modes. It also reminds us why we keep going. Because each failure contains knowledge. Each explosion is data. And each wrecked booster is a stepping stone toward something extraordinary. So as the dust settles over the Gulf of Mexico and the Indian Ocean, as engineers dive back into their data, and as SpaceX preps the next Starship for flight, one thing is clear. This journey is far from over. Flight 9 fell, but it did so carrying the future on its back. And if history has taught us anything, it's that SpaceX will rise from this, one Raptor engine at a time. But this wasn't just a random failure. It echoed like a haunting refrain from a song we've heard before. It served as both a warning and a waypoint, one that SpaceX cannot afford to ignore. The explosion of Booster 14 wasn't a glitch to brush off or a minor hiccup in progress. It was a message written in fire and steel. Something fundamental still needs fixing. And yet, despite that violent end, Flight 9 wasn't a total loss. In fact, it marked a critical milestone in SpaceX's larger mission, to crack the code of full booster reusability. Every shattered stage, every misfire, every explosive finale, they all contribute data. Painful lessons that push progress forward, inch by inch. But the booster wasn't the only part of Starship's colossal frame to suffer. The upper stage, the spacecraft that will one day carry humans to the moon and beyond, also fell to pieces. So what exactly went wrong with Ship 28 and Ship 35? Surprisingly, or perhaps worryingly, the failures were almost identical. Like looking into a mirror and seeing a reflection you hoped had changed. Let's revisit Ship 28 from Flight 3, the first in the new Block 1 series. At first, everything appeared fine. The spacecraft separated cleanly and drifted weightlessly through low orbit, giving us breathtaking views of Earth through the onboard camera. But that beauty quickly gave way to concern. The ship began to tumble, slow at first but clearly unintended. It wasn't just rotating for dramatic effect. It had lost control. Somewhere in the silence of space, something vital had failed. The reaction control system, the network of thrusters that keep the ship stable, was supposed to counteract this motion. But they didn't, or couldn't. The telemetry painted a grim picture. The vehicle was off-axis, drifting into a compromised re-entry trajectory. 46 minutes into flight, the heat started building, literally. The camera caught a flash of brilliance, the aft end of the spacecraft lighting up as it slammed back into Earth's atmosphere at 26,000 kilometers per hour. At that speed, air molecules aren't air anymore, they become a plasma wall of superheated gas. The 9-meter-wide steel hull of Starship was transformed into a fiery meteor. The ship's heat shield flared, red-hot plasma wrapped around the flaps, and for a moment, you could feel the ship's desperate fight to hold together. But it didn't. The angle was wrong. The speed was too high. And without stability, the heat couldn't be shed properly. Ship 28 broke apart at 65 kilometers above the surface, scattering itself across the Indian Ocean in a brilliant but tragic finale. SpaceX would later trace the failure back to the RCS, again. Without it, there was no hope for proper re-entry, no chance to reignite engines, and no way to bring the ship home intact. Fast forward a year. Different ship. Same tragedy. Ship 35 was meant to change that narrative. A brand new Block 2 vehicle with improved internals and stronger systems. It flew on Flight 9 and reached an even higher suborbital peak, 189 kilometers, cruising smoothly at target orbital velocity. Onboard cameras showed the Raptors glowing steadily beneath it, the ship slicing cleanly through the vacuum of space. For the first time, a Block II ship was performing exactly as designed. Until it wasn't. At around 20 minutes into flight, Ship 35 prepared to deploy its test payload, 8 mock Starlink satellites stored in a simplified payload bay. It was a trial run, a rehearsal for future operational flights. But something went wrong. A fuel leak inside the ship's propellant system disrupted the reaction control thrusters. The ship's attitude slipped. It began to drift. Then the payload doors failed to open. The Starlink simulant stayed locked inside. The engine relight attempt failed too. Without proper orientation, the Raptors couldn't ignite. Once again, the path home was blocked. At minute 46, Ship 35 plunged back into the atmosphere. Like its predecessor, it couldn't maintain the correct re-entry angle. Heat began to build, pressure climbed beyond safe limits, and the spacecraft disintegrated in high-altitude silence over the Indian Ocean. Telemetry was lost at 42 minutes, and by the time Earth's gravity had finished its grim work, nothing remained but debris scattered across the pre-planned safety corridor. Another flight. Another heartbreak. But the pattern is now undeniable. Both ships, 28 and 35, failed for nearly identical reasons. A flawed RCS. A loss of control. The inability to relight engines or deploy payloads. The timeline of events almost syncs like a replay. Despite a year of development and upgrades between them, the result was eerily similar. It forces a sobering question. Are these issues systemic? Or are they just the growing pains of a spacecraft unlike any built before? Flight 3, for all its drama, marked a turning point. Ship 28 became the first Block I Starship to hit suborbital altitude and gather critical re-entry data. It was a partial success wrapped in a fiery failure. Booster 10's explosion from LOX tank pressure loss and Ship 28's destruction due to RCS malfunction both left deep scars. But they also uncovered vulnerabilities that might otherwise have remained hidden. That flight was a painful teacher. Flight 9, by comparison, pushed even harder. Ship 35 flew higher and faster. Booster 14 was reused for the first time, showcasing SpaceX's ambition to finally close the loop on true booster reusability. But the dream was short-lived. The booster exploded during its descent, likely due to similar LOX pressure issues. And Ship 35 fell to the same RCS demons as its ancestor. It couldn't stabilize. It couldn't deploy its payload. And it couldn't survive the descent. So, where does that leave SpaceX? Not defeated. Not even deterred. Because if there's one constant in the story of Starship, it's this. Every failure is treated like gold. Every crash yields data. Every explosion is a doorway to improvement. This rocket system is still very much experimental and SpaceX knows it. They're iterating faster than anyone else in aerospace history, building, flying, failing, learning, and doing it all again at breakneck speed. These aren't just rockets, they're prototypes. And the team at Starbase is moving forward with eyes wide open. That said, the failures do raise serious concerns about Starship's readiness for its most ambitious roles, especially the upcoming Artemis 3 mission, which will rely on Starship to land astronauts on the moon. There's no margin for error in human spaceflight. So every RCS glitch, every failed engine relight, every depressurized tank, it all matters more now. Much more. The good news? Flight 9, for all its flaws, was still an improvement. Systems operated longer. Data was collected deeper. New configurations were tested. The pace of iteration is increasing, and that means progress, even when wrapped in fire and steel. And so the question becomes, what's next? Flight 10 is looming, although Elon Musk hasn't pinned down a date. Still, recent tweets hint at a more aggressive launch cadence, with flights 10, 11, and 12 already in preparation. Ships 36, 37, and 38 are lined up inside their giant hangars at Starbase, their stainless steel skins gleaming like sleeping giants. Their turn is coming. Each one incorporates tweaks and fixes based on previous failures. Each one is another step closer to the fully operational system SpaceX envisions. And make no mistake, what they're building isn't just another rocket. Starship is a super-heavy, fully reusable, orbital-class launch system. It's a machine meant to break the rules of economics and physics that have governed rocketry for decades. No more single-use boosters. No more throwing away stages that cost hundreds of millions. This vehicle is designed to fly to space, return, get cleaned up, and do it all again, quickly, cheaply, reliably. Eventually even with people on board. That vision isn't just for show. It's embedded in the Starship architecture itself. From the massive payload bay to the heat shield tiles to the autonomous landing software, every part of this vehicle is built with long-term utility in mind. Cargo to Mars, refueling in orbit, lunar landers, giant space telescopes. Starship isn't the end game, it's the platform. A flying foundation for whatever comes next in space exploration. So, yes, Flight 9 ended with another boom. Yes, Starship still has growing pains. But to call it a failure would miss the point entirely. This isn't a one-shot mission. It's a long road. And we're only just getting started. SpaceX is charging ahead despite setbacks. Every crash teaches something new. And if there's one thing they've shown the world, it's that failure isn't final. It's just fuel for the next flight. Thanks for watching. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into SpaceX, Starship, and the bold future of space exploration. Until next time, keep looking up.